What is going on, everybody? In today's video, we are hopping into a 12-team full PPR mock for the 2024 fantasy football season. In today's video, I will be drafting from the 1.2 overall, going round by round, breaking down what players I like, what players I don't like, what strategy overall that I want to implement from the 1.2. So for those of you guys out there who are drafting from the 1.2, you will have an opportunity to see what an actual draft may look like for you guys with the month of August now coming up. Moving into the month of August, I will do a video like this from every single draft position. As I start to get those recorded and put out, I will have them linked down below. I do have a video out from the 1.1, and I'll be working on the rest as the offseason progresses. If you guys are new to the channel, this is all we do here, all offseason long. Free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. If you guys are into that, be sure to subscribe on the way in and join our free Discord, which is also down below. We run mock drafts throughout the off season that I do on live streams that you guys can hop into and draft with the community to practice for your upcoming league. So we've got you guys handled no matter what you may need. But with all that being said, let's hop right into today's video. All right, so drafting from the 1.2, obviously in about 95% of drafts right now, maybe more, you're going to see Christian McCaffrey go off of the board with the first selection. No surprise there. But every now and then you will see like a CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, or even a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase go at the 1.1. If that happens, go hero running back, take Christian McCaffrey at the 1.2. If you guys check out my video from the 1.1 overall, I think you can just implement that same strategy. Like I said, hero running back, but in a majority of drafts, you're going to just go wide receiver at the 1.2. Whoever you think is the best selection, whether it's CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill. If you like one of those other guys I mentioned, JJ Chase, I've had some people argue Amon-Ra, AJ Brown. I'm not totally against it, but I think me personally, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, in kind of a higher overall tier, they have to be off the board at the 1.2, 1.3, in my opinion, unless Christian McCaffrey is there. So moving into the second round, okay, drafting from the 1.2, there's a couple different strategies that I like. I think you can still go hero running back and take a running back at the 211 or the 3-2. If you do that, I think you can go Devon A. Shane, Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco. There are other names that might be available there, like a Travis Etienne. Every now and then you might see a Saquon Barkley or Kyron Williams there, but I'm just not going to personally bank on it. So for me, I think that the best thing to do is just grab a wide receiver right there at the 211, the best available, and then take the best available running back at the 3.2. But if you wanted to go aggressive at wide receiver, especially in a double flex format, I think that's completely okay as well. Not afraid to go zero running back this year, but I think there's enough upside with some of those running backs that were mentioned just now, whether it's Henry, A-Chain, guys like that. And I'm really high on Pacheco. If you like Jacobs there, that's fine as well. That it's okay to go and take one of those guys because I think they can finish as top 5 running backs. But if you want to go aggressive at wide receiver, take the best 2 available wide receivers at 211 and 3-2. I think that's okay as well because I still think there's really good late round running back value at this point that we're drafting. As August is about to begin, I think there's really, really good mid to late round running back value this year. But once again, to get a guy who can finish top 5, top 8 upside, nothing wrong with that whatsoever as well. So looking at potential wide receivers who may or may not be available at the 211, because I do think, especially drafting against the player who's drafting at the 1.1, they're probably going to take a wide receiver. So you want to go ahead and get a wide receiver off of the board at the 211, then take the best available running back at the 3.2. So looking at wide receivers who might be there, I think you're looking at anyone between Chris Olave and Devonta Smith. It just really depends on how aggressive your specific league or specific draft is at the wide receiver position. So I say just take the top rated player. I'm really okay with any of these names, anyone from Devontae Adams through Devonta Smith. If you look at Sleeper's ADP, I am okay with. But the players that I prefer would be, and like I don't think Chris Olave is going to be available there. So I think Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk, Mike Evans, any of those guys, completely fine. And then if you have to move into the next tier of DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman, Devonta Smith, I'm okay with all of those guys. As we see Adams, Olave, Collins off the board, sometimes you might see one of those players fall back to the 211. Like Drake London's still available right now. So far, this has been a heavier draft at running back. London might go with the 2-1, or he might fall back in the second. It just kind of depends on who you're drafting with. I'm not worried about Brandon Ayuk's situation. I think he's going to be back with the Niners when everything's said and done. So if you take him at the 211, I'm okay with it. I like Drake London a lot going into the year. I think his touchdown upside is very high with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. Fine with him there. Mike Evans, I think, is going to, as long as he stays healthy, be close to repeating what he did last year. So I think he's completely fine there. Like I said, if you want to reach into that tier of like Jalen Waddle, even Devonta Smith, I think they're being kind of drafted against their ADP right now on Sleeper, so I'm fine with any of those guys. And I like Deebo Samuel here as well. But we'll go ahead and take Brandon Ayuk. I think he's going to be back with the Niners. I think he's fine to take here. If you're worried about the situation, just go with whoever you think is the best available wide receiver right here. There's plenty of good names. And then at the 3.2, we'll go ahead and take our quote-unquote hero running back. If Derrick Henry's there, then I'm smashing the draft button on Derrick Henry all day long. If we have to kind of reach for Isaiah Pacheco, I don't have a problem with that either. If you like a Josh Jacobs there, I think that's fine as well. So Derrick Henry's gone. Now, I will say this. If, let's say, the team at the 1.1 went like aggressive at running back, or another team in the second also went went with a running back, whether it's, Derrick Henry, then the team at the 1.1 takes Jacobs or Pacheco. You don't like any of the running backs right there, then just start aggressive at wide receiver. But I'm not afraid to kind of reach for Isaiah Pacheco. I think he has top 5 upside this year. You guys have been following the channel closely throughout the offseason. You guys know that I'm really high on Isaiah Pacheco. So we'll take him there at the 3-2, and we will move right along. So I do think drafting from the 1.2 is a little bit unique. I think there's a couple different strategies you can implement, right? And it really is contingent on who gets drafted at the 1.1, whether CMAC goes or not. Like I said, if CMAC goes, and I think if CMAC does not go, you're moving right into a hero running back position. If he does go, which he does most of the time, then you either have the choice. Do you want to go with a quote unquote hero running back start where you take a running back in the first 3-4 rounds? Or do you just want to go aggressive at wide receiver? I've done enough teams this offseason that I think it's completely okay just to start with 4 wide receivers and absolutely load up behind a CeeDee Lamb or a Tyreek Hill, especially if you play in a double flex format. But we'll take Pacheco here. We will move right along. Let's take a look ahead to the 4.11 and the 5.2. For me, I'm probably going to do one of two things. Either continue to load up at wide receiver, get 2 wide receivers in a row, or depending on who's available there at running back, take a wide receiver and a running back and just kind of even things out here. So I do think there are good values at the 6.11 and 7.2 at wide receiver as well. But I think, especially behind Pacheco and kind of viewing him as a hero running back, even though we're taking him in the 3rd, I think that there are still going to be pretty good options later at the 6.11 and the 7.2 at running back as well. So one main thing to mention, I will be going quarterback late and tight end mid to late, especially in 12-team formats. Like, I don't think there's really any reason right now to go early quarterback. You don't ever really need, in my opinion, a top 3, top 5 quarterback to win a championship. I think players who finish in the top 10 at the quarterback position are good enough. And I do think there are players late in drafts right now, whether if you're looking at like a mid-tier, Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, all those guys kind of that mid-tier between an ADP of 75 all the way to an ADP of 100.2 for Brock Purdy. I think those guys can win you a championship. Or if you just want to go even later than that, Tua's ADP is 107, Goff's ADP is 111. Jaden Daniels, a ton of upside there. His ADP is 113. Trevor Lawrence has an ADP of 128. Herbert's at 119. You got Cousins, Stafford, Rodgers, Baker, all going very late. I'm just not worried about the quarterback position. I'm always a late round drafter when it comes to the quarterback position, unless there's just a value that comes to you that's way too good to pass up. Like, Mahomes is sitting there and we're in the 7th round, then, maybe you're going to look at things differently. In terms of tight end, this is another position where I think you can get a guy in the mid tier. Like, if you want to punt tight end and go with like a combination of Dallas Goddard and TJ Hawkinson, Dallas Goddard, Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet, whatever it may be. I'm okay with that. But if you just want to go with one of those mid-tier guys, whether it's Evan Ingram, whose ADP is a little bit better on Sleeper than I've seen on some other apps at an ADP of 67, or a guy like Jake Ferguson, whose ADP is at 87 on Sleeper, I'm okay with either of those guys as a tight end one going into the year. So good enough value, a tight end to go mid to late. Definitely good enough value, a quarterback to go late that I don't think going early quarterback or early tight end is something that you have to do right now, even in double flex formats in 12 team leagues. So this has been a pretty heavy running back draft. So I'm going to consider going RB at the 5.2, but there's also just a lot of good wide receivers on the board at the moment. So let's take Tank Dell here for some upside. A great player to kind of fill in as the wide receiver team, or excuse me, wide receiver 3 on this team. Brings a ton of upside to the table. High ceiling player, even with Diggs there. I'm not worried about Tank Dell. And looking at the 5.2, I am tempted to go running back. I like guys like DeAndre Swift, Ramondre Stevenson here, but there's also a chance that someone in that tier kind of falls out to the 6'11. And even if they don't, I think there's good enough running backs available. So let's take another wide receiver: George Pickens, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Christian Kirk. All kinds of really good names here, but um, I'm going to go ahead and draft a player. You know what? I'm just going to go with Christian Kirk because I think he, as a wide receiver 4, is beautiful. He's a PPR machine year in, year out. Someone you can rely on, is extremely consistent. He is the wide receiver 1 for the Jaguars. I don't care what anyone says. When you look back to what he did last year when he was healthy with Calvin Ridley on this team as well, he gave you single digit fantasy performances just 3 times, then he got hurt in week 13. Every other game, he had double digit fantasy points with a ceiling of 21.9 fantasy points. I get it. Brian Thomas Jr. is there now. I'm not worried about Brian Thomas Jr. Evan Ingram was on this team last year with Christian Kirk. ETN was there. Not worried about anything. As long as Kirk is healthy, he's a wide receiver 1 for the Jaguars. And when he is healthy, he is always consistent and a great player in fantasy. But you can really go with any player, wide receiver there. If you prefer Amari Cooper, George Pickens, we see Chris Godwin gone. Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Terry McLaurin, Jordan Addison. Plenty of good players available. What I'm going to be looking for at the 6'11, I'm not sure that this is going to happen, but if one of those Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers falls, whether it's Rashee Rice, Avery Worthy, or Hollywood Brown, then I'll take one of them. It just kind of depends on who you're drafting with, but the reason I consider going with one of those guys at the 5.2 is because a majority of the subscriber mock drafts that I've been doing this offseason, those guys are going against Sleeper's ADP. Those are players that fantasy managers currently want shares of, so I don't have a problem drafting them early. Plus, I think all 3 of those guys, for different reasons, are worth owning in fantasy drafts. But if we can get one of those guys at the 6'11, 7.2, then I feel like they're pretty good value. And there we see Hollywood Brown gone at the 6.1. So I don't, those guys' ADPs are all over the place. People are aggressively drafting them, and I think for good reason. But if we don't get one of those 3 wide receivers on the Kansas City Chiefs, then we're going to go probably back-to-back running backs here. It just kind of depends, right? We do need to get some running back depth on this team, and we need to get an RB2 that we believe in, that we feel like is kind of a workhorse running back. So we'll see what happens as the 6th round progresses here. We do have a nice start at wide receiver, a good mix of kind of consistency and upside. So we'll kind of see what happens as the 6th round starts with Hollywood Brown off the board, like I said, and now a little bit of a run at the running back position, but still some really good tight ends available. Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, all available here, as well as George Kittle. And still kind of an elite tier at quarterback. At least one player left from that elite tier in Joe Burrow before we move into Prescott, Murray, and Love, as well as Purdy, who are all guys that I think can finish in the elite tier, just not exactly being drafted as such. But I will say one thing about the tight end position. If Dalton Kincaid, who is now gone at the 6'8", falls, like if Kincaid's there at the 6'11", he's the one guy that I feel just really strongly about going into the year. I do like Mark Andrews. I do like Kyle Pitts, but I think that Kincaid can legitimately finish as the tight end 1 in 2024 fantasy. So if he's there at the right value, he might be a guy that makes me kind of change my strategy. So to speak. But nonetheless, looking at available running backs, I don't want to get too down at the running back position, even in full PPR. And there are a lot of really good wide receivers available here, but let's go ahead and take Raheem Mostert off the board, a player that I think is being way too forgotten about in fantasy football. I still think he's going to be a guy who comes out this season and gets a lot of work, a lot of touches. And then this next pick is tough because we still need running back help. But we're going to hold off. I've seen a lot of good value fall at running backs or at the running back position in a lot of these mock drafts. So there's just a lot of good wide receivers that I know will not come back around. Let's go ahead and take Rasheed Rice. I'm okay with Xavier Worthy there. I just want a piece of this Kansas City Chiefs offense at the wide receiver position. Rasheed Rice, we're in a perfect position to draft him. Even if he does get suspended, we have 4 wide receivers in front of him. He's a great bench piece. Going to be a great part of that offense. Going to be very consistent if he does get suspended when he comes back from that suspension. But don't forget, Rasheed Rice might not even get suspended this year. It might be moved to next year. So if you want to go Xavier Worthy there, I think that's fine. The other player that I will mention who has an ADP of 101.6 on Sleeper at the wide receiver position, who's not being drafted at that ADP is Christian Watson. Just be prepared. Christian Watson, similar to Hollywood Brown, can really go anywhere off the board at any moment. And if you're getting Christian Watson as a wide receiver 5 or 6 right now in your mock drafts, that is a steal. And I think come August time, middle of August, third week of August, you're just not going to be able to do that. Okay. He's a player who goes earlier in underdog drafts and best ball drafts. He's not going to be available that late, and kind of in that close to that same tier as Deontay Johnson at an ADP of 93.4. You're not going to, he might get drafted right at 93, but he's another player whose ADP on Sleeper right now is very beneficial. Both those guys, I think, are going to be very good in fantasy for different reasons. I think Deontay, full PPR, will be very consistent. He's the number 1 option for Bryce Young. That offense is going to be improved under new head coach Dave Canales. And Adam Thielen was actually pretty dang good as a wide receiver 1 in a bad Carolina Panthers offense last year. So then Christian Watson, I get the injuries are concerning when it comes to fantasy football, annoying, but the amount of upside that he brings to the table in a good Packers offense that's going to score a lot of points this year, you just can't deny it. And like I said, if you're drafting him as a wide receiver 5, why would you even be worried about it? He's a great bench piece to have. And if you're going at different positions and you end up drafting him as a wide receiver 2, 3, or 4, that's fine as well. He is still an alpha wide receiver when he's healthy and on the field. All right, moving into the 8th round, looking at the 8-11, the 9.2. We probably need to go ahead and load up at running back. I think this is going to be one of those drafts where we just kind of punt at tight end. And, I'm saying punt at tight end, but I still think a combination of Dallas Goedert and Dalton Schultz, or Dalton Schultz and Luke Musgrave, Cole Kmet and Luke Musgrave, even if you just go 1 tight end, or whether you want to get 2 because we're punting the position, I still think these are very good tight ends who can easily finish in the top 10. So if Jake Ferguson falls out all the way to the 9-2, maybe I'll take him as we see Evan Ingram off the board at the 8-4. We also got Bowers and Njoku ahead of Jake Ferguson in ADP, but I prefer Ferguson over both those guys. If Christian Watson's available at the 8-11 or 9-2, I'll definitely consider him. I won't be surprised if he gets taken the next 2 picks, but once again, we have to continue to get some running back depth. And we've seen 4 running backs gone in this round so far. So once again, for me, when I'm playing hero running back, whether I take a running back in the first, second, or third, part of that strategy is understanding that there's going to be running backs who pop up on the waiver wire as the regular season progresses. So you're not going to panic too much that your RB2 is Raheem Mostert and your RB3 is Zach Moss or Gus Edwards or Blake Corum, or Jerome Ford, or a player who's maybe potentially in a handcuff situation but can still get touches, right? So I'll say if Christian Watson's here, I'm just not going to pass on him, and I'm practicing for a double flex format. If you're in a single flex format, then I think this roster is even better. But if you're in a double flex format, you just want to be strong at wide receiver, in my opinion. So I will go ahead and take Gus Edwards here. I think he's the workhorse back for the Chargers. I know that Vidal is definitely an interesting rookie option. J.K. Dobbins has been kind of a buzz name in the offseason. I still like both of those guys at their given ADP, but Gus Edwards, I think when he's healthy, when he's on the field, is going to be the workhorse back as well as the goal line back for the Chargers. So I'm taking shares of him when I can. And as an RB3 in this type of format, I'm completely fine with it. So looking at things right now, if we pull up the roster, we have three running backs: Isaiah Pacheco, Raheem Mostert, Gus Edwards. The rest of our roster is just the wide receiver position, and full PPR and double flex formats. This is what you want. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk, Tank Dell, Christian Kirk, Rashee Rice, Christian Watson. We don't need to draft another wide receiver in this draft. We have plenty of upside. We have consistency. We're loaded at the wide receiver position. We're going to be able to have a player available in the flex all season long. And if you play in a single flex format, that's okay too. You still have somebody who's viable in the flex or at the wide receiver 1 or 2 option if something happens to CeeDee Lamb or Brandon Ayuk. So we're in a great spot right now. Tons of upside. Great players on this team. The upside, the majority of our points comes from the wide receiver position in this type of build. And then we're banking on our RB1 finishing in the top 8, the top 5, having that, high upside. I think Isaiah Pacheco can be that guy. If it's Derrick Henry, if it's Devon Achane, if it's a Barkley, a JT, a Brees Hall, a Bijan, whoever it may be. I really think any running back that you see on the board from C-Mac to Pacheco is capable of it. My kind of sleepers in later rounds would be like Cook, Rashad White. These aren't really later rounds, but later compared to the guys that we just talked about. Jacobs is okay. I just think there's, just a lot of wealth on that offense to be spread around. But you could say the same thing about the Chiefs, right, with Pacheco. So if you like Jacobs, I'm not completely out of it. So we're not banking on a tremendous amount of upside out of the RB2 position. If we get double digits out of them majority of the weeks on the season, then we're going to be happy and we're going to be playing the waiver wire at the RB2 position. So looking ahead to the 10.11, 11.2, probably want to go ahead and get a tight end out of the way. Jake Ferguson's still available, so we'll keep a strong eye on him. We don't need to even consider the wide receiver position for the rest of this draft. This was a heavy running back draft, so traditionally I'd prefer to get like a Jerome Ford or Chuba Hubbard or Blake Corum with this next pick, but they are all off of the board. I'm okay settling for Rico Dowdle. I do think he could move in to the RB1 spot for the Dallas Cowboys. If Zach Charbonnet is there, I think he's a good handcuff to go ahead and take. So we'll just kind of sit back and see what happens. And we could consider a quarterback here as well. Jordan Love is available at the moment. There goes Rico Dowdle. Tua's on the board. Jared Goff, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. We got plenty of options. I don't really feel panicked at the position yet. But I will say, we'll probably take Zach Charbonnet if he's there. This has been a heavy running back draft, but once again, with what I just went over, I'm just not overly concerned about it. Okay, so let's take Zach Charbonnet, a great handcuff here, and let's move right along. I'm okay with that as the RB4 on this roster, and then we're going to hope that Jake Ferguson falls out here to 11.2. The team does take him, even though he has Kyle Pitts. So we could take Goddard here. I'm okay with that. Like I said, I prefer Ferguson. The team in front of us has 3 running backs as well. So I thought it was more likely that they would take Charbonnet over Ferguson. But this is why I draft with our actual subscriber base, because you just never know what's going to happen. And they keep things much more competitive in these mock drafts. So let's take Dallas Goddard. I do think we could wait at tight end. Like if you liked another running back here, like maybe Jalen Wright, maybe Marshawn Lloyd, J.K. Dobbins, whoever it may be. If you wanted to go ahead and take another running back, wait for tight end at the 12-11, I think that's fine as well. But we'll go ahead and take Goddard. I do think he has a good amount of upside. And when you look at Goddard over the last 2 years, it doesn't really feel like it, but he's still been a top 15 tight end actually every year for the last 3 seasons. So Goddard, I think, in what's going to be an improved Eagles offense this year is a strong pick right here. And if you wanted a second tight end, you could do so. We do have 4 running backs on this team. So really with that extra bench spot, if you just want to go best available player, whether it's running back, wide receiver, or tight end, that's fine. In theory, we need running back depth at this point in the draft, but it's like when we're looking at who's available, the options aren't really that great. So if you want to go with a different position, I think that's fine. I don't think we really need to at the wide receiver spot, but there are some, names who might be available late in these drafts, like Dontavion Wicks, Demarcus Robinson, whoever your guy is at the end of the draft, Ricky Pearsall, may I dare say Adam Thielen, Troy Franklin, Brandon Cooks. There are names. If you like them, you can go ahead and take them, or you could take two quarterbacks or two tight ends, whatever you prefer. But really, we're just going to see who's the best available quarterback at the 12, 11, or the 13.2. Like, I mean, the team in front of us has Stroud and Caleb Williams, so they probably won't take another quarterback. So we could maybe wait till the 13.2 to take a quarterback. We could take two quarterbacks, whatever you want to do. We're in a good spot right here at the end of the day. We've got our running backs filled out, we got wide receivers filled out, and we've got our tight end one, and we know that there's going to be good value at the quarterback position at the end of the 12th round, beginning of the 13th round. So I will say, if like Jaden Daniels is there, I'll probably take Jaden Daniels and take a second quarterback. I love the upside of Jaden Daniels, but I do think, in terms of kind of his overall frame, I think we could be close to seeing what we saw with Anthony Richardson, where the rushing upside's huge. He's still a good passer. He's in a good enough situation offensively that he can score a lot of fantasy points, but is he going to be able to stay healthy is going to be the bigger question. So I like taking a Jaden Daniels and then taking a player like Tua or Goff or Herbert, T-Law, whoever you believe in at the quarterback position in that same range. So I'm okay doing that. If I went with a second tight end, I'm probably just going with a guy like Pat Fryermuth or Luke Musgrave, but honestly, I think Goddard's fine as a solo tight end. Already named some wide receivers I like. If I'm going running back here, I'm probably just going with a handcuff. As you see, Tyler Algier off the board. I think Jaleel McLaughlin is decent enough. Damian Pierce is kind of that late guy that I think is a good pick. Joe Mixon's kind of up there in age. Pierce, we've seen be 1,000-yard rusher in his rookie season. He's still tied to a good offense. He might end up being a pick that we go and take at the 13.2 as Jaden Daniels is off the board. But we can still go double quarterback here as well. So at this point, I might just go ahead and take an additional wide receiver. We shall see. And for me, my end around guy is usually Demarcus Robinson, but I don't have a problem taking Dontavion Wicks here as well. So plenty of options. If Tua lasts, then I'll probably just take Tua. Both the teams on the board at the moment, I mean, one has Hurts, one has Love. The team in front of us has Stroud and Caleb Williams. So, I'm not overly concerned that Tua won't last, but you just never know. Sometimes people want to take double quarterbacks. So there goes Jared Goff for Tua. We'll just go ahead and take Tua to try and keep it closer to ADP than see who falls out at the 13.2. I think Damian Pierce is a guy who's going to start this season on the waiver wire, so I'll go in and draft Dontavion Wicks just to secure him. But as we went over for the past couple of moments, plenty of ways to kind of finish out this draft, but we end up with Tua and Dontavion Wicks. So that puts the final roster at Tua quarterback, Dallas Goedert at tight end, Pacheco, Mostert, Gus Edwards, and Zach Charbonnet at the running back position. Remember, once again, we're going hero running back. We want that RB1 to be strong. I personally really believe in Isaiah Pacheco this year. I think he's fine as an RB1. Then RB2, we want 10 plus-ish points on a weekly basis. Mostert, Edwards, I think can get us there. Then Charbonnet is a great handcuff. We'll be paying attention to the waiver wire for RB depth throughout the season. And we're just loaded at wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk, Tank Dell, Christian Kirk, Rashee Rice, Christian Watson, and Dontavion Wicks. So plenty of upside at wide receiver, plenty of consistency, a good little mix there. Overall, a solid team. So this was a competitive draft. This is why I like doing these drafts with our subscriber base when I record these mocks for you guys, because you never know what you're going to get, and everyone knows what they're doing. You're not drafting against a computer. You're not drafting against half a computer or people who are leaving early or people who are taking kickers early or whatever, right? And this is one of those drafts where we just kind of had to adjust round by round, and we had some good players fall to us, like Rashee Rice, like Christian Watson. So that kind of changed things. I will take the upside at wide receiver majority of the time in those rounds against a late tier running back. as those guys also have a higher chance to fall out, but that didn't exactly happen this draft. Nonetheless, I still think this is a great team drafting from the 1.2. And I think when you're drafting from the 1.2, 1.3 this year, a lot of the times you're going to be seeing teams like this where you're just going to have to adjust throughout the draft. So don't get too worried about it. Here's another example of you guys of a strong team from the 1.2. Like I mentioned earlier, I will link the video that I did from the 1.1 going true hero running back, taking a running back at the 1.1 in Christian McCaffrey, so you guys can see that. And as the offseason continues to go on here into the month of August, I will be having plenty of mock drafts like this coming out from every single position, 1.1 all the way through the 1.12. So whatever you guys need, let me know, and those will be on the schedule as well. If you guys enjoyed the video and you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe on the way out. This is all we do here all season long. Free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. If you guys are into that, subscribe, come join the community. Other than that, let me know what you guys thought of today's mock, of today's team. What would you guys have done differently? Do you like the team? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comments down below. If you guys have any fantasy football questions, redraft, dynasty, or best ball, let me know. I'll get back to you guys as soon as I possibly can. With that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on the catch.